Hey, wait, can we hang on? Hang on just a second? Sorry, hey, you guys don't ever hear my voice. My name's Brian. I'm the nerd that puts the epic narrative together. Thanks for listening, by the way. I'm interrupting to let you guys know about a contest that we're running for a new logo for the epic narrative. If you're a fan of the epic narrative and you happen to be good at graphic design or digital art and you'd like to take a crack at designing a new logo for us, we would love that. We're going to be running a contest starting Monday, March 7th, 2022 through Sunday, April 10th, 2022. You can submit any art designs that you have for a new logo for the epic narrative to thebobswitzer@gmail.com. And if we think it represents the epic narrative well and we fall in love with it, you will win a $50 Apple Pay credit that we will send over to you, or an equivalent if you don't have an Apple product, and it will become the new logo for us. And we will announce the winner a couple weeks after submissions close. Sorry to interrupt. Back to the epic narrative.
Hey everybody, I'm Anna McEwen. And now for Bob Switzer with the epic narrative.
And welcome back, everybody. Thanks so much for showing up on the epic narrative. We are continuing our journey through Genesis. It's going to be an amazing year. I really enjoy some of those mini epics that are coming up in the future chapters. I see it. It's getting close. And the next chapter. The next chapter is going to be one that so many people know about, right? It's this chapter of Noah. But then we have this chapter here, chapter 5. What is that about? It's all about the family line. It's all about ancestry. It's all about bloodlines. And evidently, that's really important to God. He puts a whole chapter in here about it. Now, I do know that many people, and God bless the way that they think, right? They read all these things and they mathematically figure out how many people were born to this group and how long that they lived and where they lived, and they have all of this. It's fascinating to me. But they have it all mapped out in little, color-coded areas, oh my gosh. But you look at the ages of some of these guys, and some are just, whatever, 162. Some are 362. Some are 187. Another one's 969. That's Methuselah. 800. 130. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to read. But these guys are like becoming fathers at age 65, becoming fathers at age 130, becoming fathers at 162. It's like the culture and life that was still a part of the creation is amazing. And a lot of people think, well, are they only having these one sons? Like at 162, is that when Jared became the father of Enoch? Is that the only son Jared had? And I would say absolutely not. No, these sons are noted because of who they're going to be connected to, or the bloodlines that they continue to produce. Within the ancestry mindset of these days, you weren't required to do the family business, but you would naturally get into the family business. So like in the last chapter, we read about, at the end of the chapter, so-and-so raised livestock, so-and-so made stringed instruments and piped instruments. Another person figured out how to do smelting, right, with bronze and iron, and made tools. I'm sure that was revolutionary for farming because of how hard and cursed the ground had become because of the fact that it had to drink the blood of Abel. So bloodlines are important, and the genetics here are very pure. Aging is clearly way different than it is currently. The environment was pure. There was no pollution. To speak of. There was no impurities in the water. There was no whatever. Yeah. I was like, Bob, don't go through a list of bad things in the environment. Okay, I won't. You can just imagine how pure and clean it was. It had to be fascinating to be a part of that environment. And the genetics being pure, I mean, I've read even recently that our bodies currently will naturally live or easily live to 150 years old. I shouldn't say naturally. They'll easily live to 150 and even longer. They die because of impurities in the environment. There's things that we've taken in that start to break things down sooner than they would if it had been a pure environment. So it's even in today's culture, science can look at our beings, at our human form, and say it's not designed to die at 70 or 90. It's designed to live 150, 250, 300. It can do this, but it needs an environment where that can happen. So the purity of the environment is really important. I also want to take a minute here, talk about sin. As I've mentioned several times, a lot of people look at Genesis 3 as the beginning of human identity because that's when Adam and Eve sinned. That's when the bad stuff happened. I want to be. I just want to take a minute and look at Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve chose to sin, and Adam and Eve did not have a sin nature. Are you with me on that? If you remember, we talked about in in that episode, we talked about the fact that they were being invited to do something they had never even thought of before, and that was the fact that God was somehow holding out on them. And we talked about religion, right? Religion is always trying to get you to earn something that's freely given to you. It's trying to get you to behave certain ways so that you feel justified. You feel righteous. You feel close to God. You feel like you're the one who God approves of. But religious thought is so filled with pride and arrogance in its very nature. And it doesn't even have to come from a church. It can just come from you as an individual. And it doesn't have to be a Christian mindset. A religious mindset it takes all forms. And at any time that you enter into a practice, any kind of practice, and you say to yourself, this is going to elevate me to a place that puts me over other people because they don't do this. It can be, yeah, I'm thinking it could be yoga, it could be meditations, it could be scripture memory, it could be church attendance, it could be your personal quiet time. I've met people who have said things like, I've never missed my personal quiet time for 837 years. It's like, wow, why, why do you, why are you telling me this? That's usually what I'm asking internally, but I know why they're telling me. It's because this is their identity. I am that guy who never misses his personal quiet time. And I think to myself, well, that's fine. Like that's a fine practice to have, but it shouldn't be your identity. Your identity comes from God. Your identity comes from who you were made to be, and you were made without a sin nature. Adam and Eve didn't have a sin nature. Well, why'd they sin, Bob? Why'd they choose that? Because choice is about, freedom of choice. We talked about that before. Freedom is a core value of love. And you can choose to do something and not have it be your identity, not have it be who you are. You can choose to sin and not be a sinner. Adam and Eve teach us that. This is really important in the world of church-going people or any sort of religious followers. It doesn't have to be Christianity, Christian churches. Religion takes from you. It's a thief because it takes from you what God's already given you, which is a connection to Him. You could say, well, Bob, those people, not everybody's saved. You can't do that. No, but everybody was created in the image of God. It's a natural place for them to be. It's who they may not be acting out of that image, but it's who God made them to be. It's a beautiful image to keep going back to, and I think it's important. Obviously, I think it's important. I hear the engineer in my head going, Bob, you keep telling us it's important, but you also keep repeating it, which means it's important. Okay, I get it. I probably should cut that phrase, cut down on using that phrase. I repeat it often because it is something that was not noted in my heritage, right? In my Christian walk, it was early on. I was a sinner saved by grace. My identity was a sinner. God was going to get me to heaven because He loved me, sent His Son to die for me, but I was a sinner. That's not true. Christ came. When Christ died, He allowed me to be fully aware of the fact that God created me without a sin nature. And although I sin, it is not my identity. It's not who I am. Now I do know, in the practice of AA, right? The Alcoholics Anonymous. Every time you're there, you remind yourself and everyone else, I'm an alcoholic. Because in their system, it is important to remember that every day is a success because who you are is an alcoholic. And what are you doing? You are overcoming that identity every day. And I appreciate at some level, not at some level, I mean, I appreciate all the people that they've freed from alcoholism. And I know I know there are some who have had to go back many times. I get it. It's not a one size fits all, but that's not my point. I'm not here to evaluate AA, but there's an identity thing there, right? Every time you're there, you're an alcoholic. Every day you have to remind yourself, I'm an alcoholic. I believe that a lot of Christians need to remind themselves that they're not sinners. I think people need to remind themselves that they are a child of God, made in the image of God. Because I think that that's what we notice in the way that, like, even in the way that God dealt with Adam and Eve. He didn't deal with them as, wow, your nature is totally changed now. I can't get anywhere near you. I'm going to go home, figure this out. Somebody's got to die for this. I don't want to kill you. Jesus Christ is there, and He's like, Dad, no. Let's work out a plan. I love these guys. I'll die for them. I know you're angry and you're frustrated and you want to wipe them out, but let me step in, and they figure out this whole salvation plan. No, God dealt with them like, all right, this is what you opened yourselves up to. Remember, Adam and Eve didn't repent. They didn't ask God to fix anything. They felt some level of self-punishment that they needed to do. I know so many people that go through that, right? They suffer through that. Another form of it is self-rejection. They go through this because they look at their behavior and think that's my identity. I deserve what happened to me because of what I've done already. They talk about fate. They talk about karma. They even make it Christianese and say, well, you reap what you sow. Listen, reaping what you sow is a principle of creation. And that's why it's important to remind yourself, I am not a sinner. I may sin, but it's not my identity. Because you reap what you sow. You'll reap the benefits of those thoughts over and over and over again. I'm a child of God. I'm made in the image of my Creator. I represent Him on this planet. I bring light into darkness. I bring peace to unsettledness. I bring joy to those that are in mourning. I bring hope to those that are hopeless. You can say, but Bob, I don't experience that. Like I get depressed. I get upset. I go into a crowd of people that are angry. I get angry. Like I don't change anything. And I'd say, then change your mind about it. Change your mind. That's not who you are. You are not somebody who just goes along with the crowd. You're somebody who influences a crowd because of who you are. And you not only influence a crowd with the light and life and love that you bring, you help the crowd understand that they can bring life and love and light to all that they do. It's really obviously something that I think a lot of people miss. I think a lot of and a lot of people, I don't even think they're aware of it. Like they're so used to either going through the motions, they have their hope set in heaven someday in the what old words would be, in the sweet by and by. That was like an old hymn. People loved to sing it because it was this promise, like, well, basically this world sucks. This world's going to get worse. Things are going to get really, really bad. But we'll get to heaven. In the sweet by and by, we'll all get there. And that was another hymn, right? When we all get to heaven, that was a gospel, like it was a quartet sang it all the time. People love that song. Oh, it was great. And it, whatever. I'm not anti any of that. It just it just perpetuates what people believe about themselves that I don't think is true. I don't think it's true. And I'll just mention this. There's a lot of people that go to Romans 7 and they'll say, see, this is who I am. And I would encourage you almost, I was going to say, I would almost require this, but that's not fair because that's religion. But I would encourage you to look at chapter 6 and chapter 8. Because chapter 6, God is constantly saying, you're dead to sin. And chapter 8, he says, you're not a sinner. You are the image of Christ. Christ is in you. This is who you are. You are dead to sin. You no longer sin. You're not a sinner. But people ignore those two chapters, or they spiritualize them. Well, yeah, that's true. As the Father sees me through the blood of Christ, I am pure. This is true. But chapter 7 is the life that I live here on earth. And then in chapter 8, once again, we're reminded of how wonderful it will be in heaven. That's great. Or God saying, this is who you are. And this is who you're not. And just a reminder, this is who you are. Don't get stuck in the middle. This is awesome. Excuse me, I don't know why, but that little impression that I did really messed up my throat. Hang on. There, little drink. Little drink will go a long way. All right. Oh, my goodness, Bob, where are you? Oh, we're in Genesis. How'd you get to Romans? Just wandering around. Here we go. Verse 2 of chapter 5 is really interesting. Verse 1, this is the written account of Adam's family line. When God created mankind, he made them in the likeness of God. They're the purity of everything. Verse 2, he created them male and female and blessed them and named them mankind when they were created. Now, some people look at that and say this is a second Adam and Eve. I don't think it is, but that these two mirror the originals. And these two were not born in another spiritual plane, but were born here on earth. So the other two, they're saying come from another dimension, which is where the garden is, which is where Eden was, and where Cain and Abel and the two trees exist. Just throwing it out there. Why? Because we're all about the possibility. I love it when we mess with people's well, there's only one. Well, maybe not. It's just kind of fun. It's just kind of fun. All right. I probably shouldn't have even gone there. People are like probably freaking out. All right. So here we go. Creation, we were made in the image and likeness of God. This is, even referred to in Job chapters 1 and 2. There were things. Hang on. So I'll just continue. I know for some you're like I've really overstepped here, but just hang with me. Let me just finish this thought. So there are those who believe that this is a second Adam and Eve that were created on earth, that the first ones were born in a spiritual plane, and they could travel between heaven and earth. They were the sons of God. They could travel and move in and out of spiritual dimensions, just like God can. And these are the ones that we read about later who found, the women of earth to be incredibly attractive. And they would take the women of earth and they would make babies with them. And we get the Nephilim, which we'll get into. We'll talk more about that on another episode. I'm just saying, this is where some of the heritage, some of the bloodlines, people believe were contaminated, and that's why that this chapter is there. It's like these are all the bloodlines that are available. These are the ones that we're recounting because they are on Earth. We're mankind. This is mankind's history. Whew, all right. So I don't know. I don't know if I want to go that far into it, but it's a fascinating study. That these people are not. I don't want you to think that they're crazy. They're not. They have a lot of verses that they draw from, a lot of verses that sometimes we just kind of ignore because you think, what is God talking about? I don't know. This must be something. Like if we narrow our viewpoint to only that of which we were told or which we understand, then we miss the opportunity sometimes to see something really amazing and big. And this whole thought that mankind was a different being than what was created in the garden when they were called, Elohim, well, likeness of God. Just throwing that out there. Now, in this chapter, we get all kinds of people. Like I said, Adam is here, Seth is here, Enoch is here. Enoch, it says that, Enoch walked faithfully with God for 300 years. This is verse 22, and had other sons and daughters. In other words, lots of things. Enoch had lived a total of 365 years. Enoch walked faithfully with God, and he was no more because God took him away. That's an amazing thing. He just disappears. And if you read the books of Enoch, which are basically like a journal from his perspective, his interaction, he went through multiple journeys into spiritual realms. Multiple journeys and it was very natural for him to be there, and he describes them in detail. And then he also describes what's going on earth, and he describes the results of people's behaviors and the spiritual things that were released as a result of people's behavior as things are leading up to Noah. So I found those books. I know I've mentioned them a number of times, not because I think that they're the Bible. I'm not trying to take the Bible, add to the Bible. I'm not. But it's an amazing recount of this man, and it seems to have pretty substantial historical, I don't want to say accuracy, we'll say the history of it is legitimate in that it's not seen as a book that somebody wrote, in Europe in the, during the Middle Ages and then pass it off as a book that that was written in the Middle East during this early times of the earth. It holds up. It holds up academically. Now Noah also comes out during this time in this chapter, and it says Noah, verse 30, after Noah, sorry, verse 29. Lamech had lived 182, and he had a son. He named him Noah, and he said, he will comfort us in labor and painful toil of our hands, caused by the ground that the Lord cursed. And of course, here they still all give God credit for making the earth horrible, but it was Adam who did it, and we all know that. So Noah, it says that Noah will comfort us or give us rest. Now, many believe in the Jewish historical oracle history, they believe that Adam's curse would end with a male that was born after Adam's death. So they knew that there would be a man in the future. This is what they believed. And after Adam died, Noah is born. He's the first male born after Adam died. So this is why he gets the prophetic word spoken over him. And this is Lamech, who says, this is the one. So Noah is set apart at birth as the one who is going to do something that would break the curse of the land so that it would actually be easier to farm again. They probably believed that it would go back to the the days prior to eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Like, it would become super easy again to plow up the fields, and the earth would just, explode with whatever they planted there. So Noah in the archaeological history, Noah is given credit for coming up with several farming tools that made life easier. It made more ground more usable. It was starting to break the curse. I don't think he, I don't know what he thought he would do, but that was evidently the direction that he started to go in as a young man, hearing that he was the one that was going to bring about this type of mindset, this type of result, in that whatever he was doing was going to bring about easier farming. So he went in the direction of maybe new tools, and he used iron, and he used brass, and copper, and he figured out ways to break up the ground more easily. It's kind of fascinating to think about. And for me, it changes some of the things that sometimes we are noted, generally speaking, about Noah, that somehow he was just the only guy on the planet who loved God, and so God was like, well, you're the only guy that gets out. No, this was a guy who was watched by men. This was a guy who, when he brought a new invention, into the culture, people wanted to see it. They wanted to try it. They wanted to buy it. Noah probably made money selling inventions and tools to the farmers of the world. It made life easier. Noah had 3 sons, in 500 years. 3 sons that are noted. And I'm sure lots of daughters. So one of the questions I have is, like, was it normal to, like, have kids every 70 or 100 years? Or was it normal not to have that many sons? Or did they not have sex very often because they were working so hard? Some seem to really know all of the answers to that. Like, absolutely. They only had, Noah only had 3 sons. They They only they only reproduced once every 70 to 100 years. They would raise a child till it was, married and having children on their own, and then they would have another. I don't know. I don't buy that, but I can't defend it either. I just It's just an opportunity for you to think about Earth's population at this time. I don't know, but a lot of people seem to. A lot of people seem to know what the number was. And if you're a young Earth person, you know what the number is. And if you're an evolutionary person, you have no idea what the number is. And I don't either. I don't know. But there were a lot of people here. A lot. And Enoch walked with God so much. And this is why I think that there's so much credibility to the book of Enoch. He was in heaven so often that God finally was like, you know what? Just, you can do what you want. Like, you can stay or go. And I think Enoch traveled in and out of spiritual realms, just like God is designed to do. Like, he tapped into that ability. And I don't want to say that we don't have that ability. I just think we're so deaf to the frequencies of creation around us that we just don't know what we can do. And I think in a lot of ways the earth just is like, come on. Like, do you have any idea what you're created to be? Do you have any idea the authority and power that you're created to have? And you're numb to it. You're dumbed down to religious practices that mean nothing because you have all of this. You have all of this and you do nothing with it. So when I read these things about creation, I just keep thinking, what am I not tapped into? I need to do more. I need to find more. Anyways, we go into this. It's kind of a boring chapter. I get it. And I know I kind of went off on some other things, but I want you to have some fun and imagine all the possibilities that are going on in the world, all the families lines that this is drawn to, all the family gatherings what it would look like. And remember that it's not like a moon. Like, the earth is beautiful and it is lush. It's just difficult. And the people get to, they know each other. They understand that they're connected. It blows my mind when I look at these things and realize like Noah is born and he's the first male born after Adam died, which means he still has opportunity to speak to people who were alive at that time. He didn't necessarily speak to Adam, but he could have spoken to Eve. He could have spoken to who's the guy that Seth? It's like, who replaced Abel? He could have spoken with Seth directly. I mean, how bizarre is that? Because of how long everyone lived. He's speaking to people who were literally alive that long, that at that point of creation. He probably spoke to people who were alive in the garden or in the land of Eden before they came to earth. He knows all of this. And not just him, but people speak about it. The legends, the truth, there are those that are I would imagine at some level preaching that of what they missed and how we got to make sure God doesn't, in their opinion, get mad at us again. Or many are like, no, like we have tremendous powers. And I went over briefly went over this possibility. But what if the spiritual beings of other realms were allowed to travel in and out of Earth? What if those spiritual beings were We're created by God to help humans and move them along, help give them wisdom, teach them how to stay connected to creation. And what if those beings just overstepped because they just thought, man, these girls are gorgeous. And what they saw in the creation of humans was so attractive because humans reflected the creator in ways that no other being in the spiritual realms did. It's fascinating. It's just fascinating. That's what I mean. Like, let your imagination run. But wherever it brings you, I want you to, it's got to bring you back. It's got to bring you back to who you truly are. You are created in the image of God. You are not created with a sin nature. Wherever your imagination goes, go back to that place where you start to strip away religion, things that you're supposed to do in order to make sure God is happy with you and doesn't allow bad things to happen to you because, you're that good. And I think it's important when you use your imagination as you are drawn to ideally you want to draw yourself to the light and love of the beginning of creation. You want to draw yourself to the original frequencies of creation so that you really start to hum with what God has created. But also leave yourself some mystery. Mystery is really valuable. And a lot of people are uncomfortable with it because they just want to know, this is what the Bible says. This is what this is what my preacher said. This is what the book I read said. So I'm just this is the evidence that, demanded a verdict, said I've got everything down. I don't need any mystery in my life. Oh, but I think we miss it. I think mystery, remember, darkness came out of the light. Darkness came out of the light that God created. Darkness is the mystery that's available for us to interact with. It's not scary. It's not evil. It's just mystery. It's okay. Let's step into it. Enjoy it. And if you don't have time for it right now, that's fine. Just don't be afraid of it if your imagination starts to run. All right? All right. Next week we will start getting into the craziness down here on Earth. It's just, yep. All right. That's it for now. Have yourself a good day, everyone.
Don't go anywhere. We've got Bob Thoughts.
All right. So I laugh because, this episode was, it's just weird, right? In a lot of ways. It's probably not one that you see a lot of preaching on because it's really about bloodlines. And unless at some level you think that the bloodlines had become contaminated, there's really no reason for there to be a record, an accurate record of bloodlines. But so I get it. Like some of you, if this is your first rodeo with with the epic narrative, you probably walk away going, man, this guy's just weird. But it is part of the story, and it's in Scripture, and I believe you need to be able to interact with it in such a way that you have some reason for it to be there. Otherwise, it's some sort of throwaway chapter. Like, well, I don't know. They just wanted us to know where everybody was from and how long everybody was living. And there is value to that. You definitely get the aging of the earth, and you get the expansion of the population, etc. But there's also those bloodlines that you need. I don't know if you need to, but you have the opportunity to interact with. So that being said, what I really my thoughts went to today was the idea that there should be people that you can talk to and bounce ideas off of that you can that at some level you remain friends with, but you don't necessarily have to agree with. Theological conversation should be a continual part about theology, right? Theology is often presented in today's Western culture as a rock solid thing, something that has been determined by smarter, wiser, more educated people than you, and now you get to just leave it alone. You just believe what we say. We have a statement of faith. It has 12 points, 24 points, 48 points. We have a creed that we resuscitate, rejuvenate, regurgitate, that we say over and over again. And in in all of this, what you believe, and that's all you need to know. But theology was not that. Like, theology was always a conversation up until the modern era, when the scientific pursuit of truth infiltrated the church. Theology became a science rather than a conversation, and I believe it can be both and should be both, and unfortunately has moved away from the conversation part for years. I do think the conversation is coming back. Unfortunately, it gets maligned a lot as deconstructionism, and that becomes this big I laugh because literally people have made ministries and personal platforms out of the idea of deconstruction, and all they're trying to do is get you to stop believing what everybody tells you to believe. But at some level, they're telling you to believe what they're telling you to believe, which is don't believe everything everybody tells you to believe. It's ironically twisted, and many people fall for it. But that's okay. God bless them. They're doing what they think they need to do. But the theological conversations should be taking place, and those conversations are good. I've had one recently where I sat, and for me to go past 8:30 at night in a deep conversation is not a normality for me. But when I'm engaged in that sort of conversation, I think I went to 11 o'clock that night. It was really good, and we didn't, I would say, agree on every nuance. We agreed on some of the basic core things about God, right? God is love. God is good. Jesus is the way to the Father. Like, those sort of things were core values we all agreed on, but we didn't all agree on all the nuances of all the things that were being said, and it was okay. And it was so refreshing. Like, I left the conversation not like, oh, I gotta come up with better points tomorrow, because I was gonna see them again tomorrow. I gotta convince this person. I left going, wow, that was a fun conversation. That was a life-giving conversation. I was challenged. They were challenged. I've got some new things to think about. They have some things to think. Maybe I didn't leave wanting to debate them or correct them. I left wanting to have another conversation with them, because it was engaging and life-giving, and I would say, like, iron sharpening iron, to put it in a Christianese phrase. It was beneficial, and we've lost the benefit of that because most broad brush, most leaders of churches and ministries are trying to maintain their kingdom. They are not looking to take in new ideas. They're looking to take in new followers. And if you're going to develop followers and not leaders, then you need people to just do what they're told, or agree with what you're saying, because they need to follow you. And you take on the, quote, responsibility for their spiritual development. And you take on the role of making sure they know the right things to know, or they could get it wrong and fall off the face of, the Christian world. Like, that kind of responsibility is, it's arrogant to take that on. It's arrogant. I'm not saying that your heart's not right. I'm not saying you're not motivated correctly. It's just, it's not a role anyone was supposed to have. The role we're supposed to have is to engage in relationship, maintain conversation, and help people be followers of a king, not of one of the, not of a ministry, not of a pastor. It's a fascinating diametric that people need to interact with. So I would encourage you. You have an imagination about a story like I do. Like I listened to the Bloodlines, and I was like, wow, Bob, like it's a good thing you bounce these ideas off of people, because you can sound crazy to a lot of people, and that's fine. I don't mind, but I also don't teach the epic narrative with the idea of here is the right view on the story. What I hope to do is engage people's imaginations so that they go, wow, I never thought of that, or wow, I need to look into that, or that's what I've always thought when I read that passage. Whatever, it doesn't matter. We're just telling a story. But when it comes to your life, you need to engage, you need to interact. And if you interact with people that are just saying, nope, this is what it says, nope, this is what you need to believe, those aren't conversations. I'm not saying they're not nice people, but you need to find other people to engage with, strengthen yourself with, challenge yourself with. And sometimes, it may end up just being in the form of literature or podcasts or, conferences that you go to, just so that you get a different point of view, so that you can sharpen and strengthen where you're coming from without just putting together ammunition to shoot at other people who might not agree with you. All right, enough thoughts for today. I hope you guys are having a fabulous one out there on this beautiful, amazing planet that we get to exist on. I look forward to hearing from you and seeing you again next week on the Epic Narrative.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, you can subscribe to this podcast on any platform you use. You can also reach out to Bob for questions or booking at thebobswitzer.com or email him at thebobswitzer@gmail.com. See you next week, guys.